David here. Boom, solid X steak. Got another vid going on. So in the last couple of vids I've been talking about the notion that people are threatened by ideas that don't that do not align themselves with their own preconceived notions. Clearly we have some emotional investment in our worldview, and we look for ideas that validate that worldview. You know, clearly I believe in God. Clearly I'm drawn to books, if you will, books and ideas that validate that view of mine, you know, because that's what I'm interested in. You know, I'm not going to necessarily read something that contradicts the way I see things. I'm not going to be interested in that. And in the same way, atheists are going to be drawn to ideas that validate their worldview. Therefore, things that are outside of our interest, if you will, things that are outside of those ideas which sum up, which are the assessment of our sense of reality, you know, that we are going to be opposed to some degree, resistant, if you will, that we will want to, you know, to at least we are not necessarily excited about said ideas. So one might say, you know, that get Christians, atheists, theists, atheists, they're all cherry picking, man, what they want to know. They're cherry picking, we're all cherry picking ideas as regards to what we want to know. I think, though, that there's a difference between theists and atheists. At least for me, I think that the difference is, one might say that in my perspective, it doesn't matter how the house was built. It doesn't matter how we came to be here. My conception of a creator extends beyond the nature of process. So if it turns out that those processes in nature are other than what would seem to directly reflect the hand of a creator, that doesn't break me. That doesn't become cracks in my perception of God. God's existence does not hinge on how I speculate he should do things. You know, if it turns out that Stephen Hawking's quantum theory ultimately explains how one ultimate, primordial, rudimentary system begot all other systems, if life is truly born on the back of some emergent quality of the universe, then this, in my judgment, is the way God did it. You know? It might be, the downside might be that there's less conversation to be had because all the cards are stacked on one side. It's like, well, you know, I guess me and the mystics will hang out over here. Right? You know, my belief in an eternal Father, an eternal God, is not wrecked on the rocks of how nature reveals itself. My belief in God, in an eternal Father, is not wrecked on the rocks of how nature reveals itself. Because it seems to me that no matter the evidence, it seems to me that it is more reasonable to conclude a creator. It seems more reasonable to conclude a creator than to be invested in the notion that physical phenomenon is all that is or ever will be. And yet this is not the world which has been evidenced to us. What have we found, rather? You know, even Stephen Hawking, I think it was back in the 60s, him and some other dude, they theorized that, man, you know, if at the beginning of the Big Bang, everything that was of infinite density, this spot, if you will, everything was reduced down to this axiom, this physical axiom, that space itself would be infinitely curved in on itself, which would then imply that there would be no space. So Stephen Hawking theorized, frickin' 40 years ago, that at the beginning of times there was no space. If there's no space, then there's no particle, there's no original particle, there's no original system, there's nothing in a place where there is nothing. There's no space, there's no physical nothing there. So naturalism runs out of steam. There isn't something naturalistic at the bottom of all things, because at the bottom of all things is ultimately nothing, is a space that doesn't exist. So what have we found? We have found at the beginning of everything is an infinitely curved space in which it curves into nothing. You know, something had to make it happen. A causal beginning of the Big Bang. You know, what have we found? We have found the incomprehensible improbability of the constants of nature. What have we found? We have found the technological complexity of a simple living cell. Highly advanced technology to formulate and craft a single living cell. The exponentially improbable parameters of the cosmos. This is what we have found. What have we found in nature? What has nature showed us? Nature has revealed to us the exponentially improbable parameters of a cosmos which has cradled the living, as though we are wanted, as though we are loved. If the truth of God is indigenous to existence, and if the embrace of this truth reveals to us purpose in our lives, then our choices have meaning. And I wonder if the real problem herein lies in our choices. I wonder if ultimately the theists are acknowledging that the things that we do matter. And I wonder if the atheists ultimately are betting on the idea that the things that we do don't really matter. What does that look like? What does that mean? For the theist, there is a burden of responsibility, which they find as an existent quality in life. It is not just a subjective religious view. It is just not a nice thing. It's not a crutch to make you feel good. There is a burden of responsibility in which we must give account for ourselves. It would seem that the atheists have, in their assessment of things, set aside this notion of having to give an account for oneself ultimately. I mean, certainly we are accountable to one another, but this is not what the theist is ultimately seen as meaningful. The theist is ultimately seen as meaningful that we must give an account to God. We seek to evade. One must acknowledge that we seek to evade when we suppose that existence is baseless, without ultimate meaning. And if indeed it is meaning which is the essential issue, if it is meaning that is the real burning issue, one must wonder if meaning indeed will take the day. if meaning will be proven to be that indigenous truth that transcends the trouble of our life, the controversy of our life, what ultimate weight of glory and joy might await the fruition of those who embrace this meaning. In the book of Romans, chapter 1, starting in verse 19. That which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. All right, man, that's the vid. God bless, guys. Hope there was something there of significance for you, the viewer. You who are viewing this video, I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, man, his eternal Godhead and power, is not the incomprehensible parameters of the cosmos not due to God's eternal Godhead and power? The technological complexity of the first living cell, the incomprehensible improbability of the constants of nature, are they not to do with God's eternal Godhead and power?